So all we've done here is frozen the product. All we've done here is dry the product. Again, all we've done here is chop up the meat product. Here, all we've done is pasteurize the product. So these are only minimally processed. We probably haven't lost a lot of nutrients in these particular products. Now we've got some more examples of processed foods, but these are the ones that we might use as ingredients. So they've only undergone a couple of little processes. So they may have been milled, refined, crushed, exposed to chemicals, and maybe only one process. So example here, the olive oil, this would have only undergone one process. So normally what they'll get is the olives, and they'll simply crush the olives. And if they make the extra virgin olive oil, it's actually quite low temperature that they use for extraction. Does heating and drying, I've got a question, does heating and drying count as ultra processing? Yes, anytime we're heating the product, drying the product, there are processing steps, and those processing steps will actually change the nutritional content. And yes, if they're actually sitting in water, if they're boiling them, yes, some of the nutrients water soluble, so you can actually get even greater losses. Anyway, back to my olive oil. So this is only sort of minimally processed, because as I said, all they're doing is just crushing the olives, and they're doing it at a relatively low temperature, so you're not losing a lot of nutrients. With the vegetable oil over here, again, they're crushing the seeds, so whether it's corn oil or sunflower oil, whatever it might be, but they also they use higher temperatures, so that's not as good as the olive oil, and also often they'll use chemical solvents to actually extract all of the oil out. So this one would be an example of a couple of different processes. They'd be crushing, and then they'll also be exposing the chemicals at the same time. Whereas this one here, all they'd be simply doing is just crushing the olives. I did change my slides, still got the old one. I think, so I did replace this one with some whole grain. So if you think about whole grains, so forget that it says cane sugar, if it was whole grains, all you've done is simply just milled the wheat and turned it into a flour. And then as we move along in the refined flour, you've milled it and you refined it. So you've taken away the bran and the germ. And this one here, the modified starch, you've milled it, you refined it, and then you've exposed it to chemicals to actually modify the starch. And these are all very highly processed, so they involve multiple steps and multiple ingredients, and often they've got artificial colours, flavours, preservatives added as well. So these will have very low nutrient content. You might still have a lot of sugar, might have a lot of energy in terms of fat and sugar, but very little in terms of nutrients, because they've undergone all those different processes involving heat and various chemicals. So whenever we're processing, we are losing some nutrients, and we lose lots of nutrients if we're applying a lot of heat, if exposed to UV light, or if exposed to oxygen. You've seen these slides before when we talked about vitamins and minerals, and we talked about losses as we're processing in terms of heating and drying the various vegetables. So we're losing vitamins through heating, and we're also losing minerals through heating as well. Now here are some of the benefits. So yes, there are disadvantages in that you will get nutrient losses, but there's also advantages that some of which we've already mentioned. It actually preserves the food, so without processing the food, you get a lot of loss of food. Because the food will only last a very short time before it actually starts to spoil or before it actually becomes poisonous. So it's important to actually process the food to extend the shelf life and to make it safe. And sometimes processing actually makes the food better in terms of nutritional content, particularly if we either fortify the food or enrich the food. So we're adding nutrients into the food itself. It's more convenience for the consumer, gives the consumer greater choice, and often actually tastes better through the processing steps. Now we've talked about fortification and enrichment before. So remember, enrichment, normally you're replacing nutrients that have been lost. So things like flour, things like cereals, because of the processing, they lose some of the vitamins and minerals, and the manufacturers allow them to put those things back in right at the end. And then we've got other groups of foods that have been fortified, where they've actually added a nutrient that wouldn't have been there naturally. So here's a whole lot of examples of fortified foods. So iodine's not normally in salt, vitamin D's not, well, a little bit in milk, but not to that level. And I'm not sure what, they've added some psyllium husk. So they've actually added fibre to this particular cereal. So they're all examples of fortification where they've actually added an additional nutrient. Remember, some of the governments actually want food manufacturers to fortify their foods. So around the world, I think I've shown you the charts where they've fortified with iodine and they've fortified with folic acid to prevent spina bifida. Here's some disadvantages. So we've already mentioned some, that you're losing some of the nutrients as we're processing the food, particularly loss of vitamins and minerals. And also, there's a potential problem that some of those food colorings, food additives, might actually cause other problems. Another problem with the processed food is often they'll add salts to preserve the food, and they'll add sugar to make the food taste better. And so you've got these foods that are very energy dense and very high in salt. So here's our minimally processed foods. So there's not too much wrong with them. So there's still got a lot of fibre in there. They haven't actually added much at all. Remember, sometimes all they're doing is chopping it up or heating it, heating it by pasteurisation. So you're not losing too many nutrients. They're not adding more fat, they're not adding more sugar. And so overall, energy content of these foods tends to be fairly low. So you can see the calories there. So these are a couple of foods that have been minimally processed. The apples, all they've done is slice them up. And here the green peas. These are canned green peas. So what it's showing that you get a fair amount of apple and you get a fair amount of peas. So you've got 357 grams of peas to give you 200 calories. So it's pretty low calories because we haven't actually added any additional sugar or any additional fat to the product. All we've done is, in this case, just chop it up. In this case, just heat it up. Canned products, not as good as frozen products. So I've seen how they do it at SPC, so they'll take it up to temperatures about 110 for about 10 minutes, which will destroy some vitamins and minerals. And also this green, they actually add a little green dye to the canned product, because during heating, otherwise the peas actually go a bit grey. So if you're going to go for peas, either get the fresh ones or get the frozen ones, not so much these canned ones. Here's some ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods, such as the chocolate bars, potato chips, whatever it might be. Often, as part of the process, you lose nutrients, so you might lose protein, they might remove the fibre, they'll add more sugar for taste, they might convert some of the polyunsaturated fats into trans fats, they'll add salt, and generally they're much higher in calories. So you can see here. These are highly processed foods, high in salt, high in sugar, high in saturated fat or trans fat, and overall very high in calories. So here's some examples of ultra-processed foods. So what they're showing here is a very small amount. So this ultra-processed food has a very high amount of calories, only 41 grams, compared to the peas that we saw previously that had 350 grams of peas gave us 200 calories. Again, these 40 odd grams of the corn chips, also 200 calories. Remember, these are baked in oil, so they've got a lot of calories coming through. These are also very high in salt. This is also very high in sugar, high in fat. So in our Western society, we're eating too many of these ultra-processed foods. Not enough of the natural food or the minimally processed foods. Okay, next we're looking at functional foods. Now, functional foods is sort of, if you like, a modified food. Well, it can be either modified or can be a natural food. We'll have a look at that in a minute. So what we're going to look at is what we mean. What's the definition of a functional food? What are the benefits? And rather than think about all the different types of functional foods, see if I can get you guys to focus on just these three examples. Fish oil, oats and berries, and think about the functional properties of those three foods. They're the ones that are most likely to come up on any quiz or test that I might give you. Also, you need to know a little bit about probiotics and how they work, and generally how these functional foods relate to the reduction of chronic disease. And then we're going to finish up looking at these so-called superfoods. So superfood is just another name that they use for a functional food. It's more of a marketing term. All right, so I've shown you something like this before. Hippocrates talked about let food be your medicine, medicine be your food. So that link between what we're eating and the development of disease was known for thousands of years. And the food manufacturers certainly know about it, and they're using that as a marketing concept, particularly to advertise some of these superfoods. So when we're talking about these functional foods, we're talking about something that provides us benefits beyond just nutrition. So they might have something extra in there, so they might have an antioxidant, or they might have high fibre, or whatever it might be. So somehow, these functional foods are reducing our chances of chronic disease. Here's the definition from the European Community. So they're saying, yep, it's got to be a beneficial effect on the body, but it's still in the form of a food, not as a supplement. So I'll show you what that means in a moment. So these are some examples of functional foods that have been developed to try to reduce the risk of certain types of chronic disease. So some of these have got probiotics, some of them actually got things like omega-3s, which will reduce heart disease, some have got added calcium to reduce osteoporosis, and so on. And these will have, the cereals often have high levels of antioxidants, again to reduce chronic disease. Now, just a natural food can be classified as a functional food, because often the natural food will contain ingredients that will prevent chronic disease. So we're saying they're natural if they haven't been modified, they haven't been processed. So an example would be just whole fruit, whole vegetable. They're already high in antioxidants. They're already high in phytochemicals. So they can help repair cells. Or other examples, salmon would be high in omega-3. Oats would be high in beta-glucan, so that'll help reduce the risk of, they'll actually absorb some of the cholesterol and reduce the risk of heart disease. Right, so all of these can be classified as functional. They're high in antioxidants, high in phytochemicals, high in fibre, all of which will actually work in preventing some of those chronic diseases. So here's some examples. So these are natural foods, some green tea, black tea, high in catechins. So these are believed to help reduce the risk of cancer. Oily fish, high in omega-3, help reduce the HDL, and so help reduce heart disease. Fruits and vegetables, high in phytochemicals, high in antioxidants, believed to help prevent cancer and reduce the chances of heart disease. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the examples. Like I said, we're going to focus on just a few examples. We'll have a look. So we're focusing on berries. So berries, they're blueberries. The bluey purple colour is coming from the phytochemicals, these anthocyanins, and these act as antioxidants. So as antioxidants, they repair damaged cells and in turn will reduce certain types of chronic disease such as cancer and heart disease. Oily fish, salmon, sardines, high in omega-3. So what they'll do is reduce the levels of LDL, which will reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. And then the third example we're going to have a look at is just oats. So it's got high in fibre. So it's got the insoluble fibre, reduces the colon cancer, and then you've got the soluble fibre, which absorbs the cholesterol, and then it'll also reduce the risk of heart disease. So there's lots and lots of examples. So the three that we could focus on was just the berries, oily fish, oats, and the other one we're going to look at is probiotics. So things like yogurt, high in lactic acid bacteria, which act as probiotics. These are a lot more examples just for general information. I'm not going to assess you on any of these. Now, the functional properties of some of these natural foods can be extracted and added to other foods, and then we can convert them into some sort of modified food. So you can add various components, whether it's added fibre, added omega-3, added phytochemicals to other foods. So we had a look at the natural examples of functional foods, and now we're going to look at some modified examples. So they're modified in that the food has either been enriched or fortified, so they've actually added something to the food. So over here in this little diagram, excuse me, we've got some enriched foods. So these have had the vitamins and minerals replaced. And over here we've got some examples of fortified foods, an orange juice that's had additional calcium added. So here's our natural foods. So these are functional foods. So remember you've got oily fish with the omega-3 or the oats with the beta-gluten. So what you can do is extract some of those functional properties over here and add them to other foods. And now these are modified functional foods. So you might have foods where you've now got additional fibre, or you've got additional phytochemicals, whatever it might be. So remember the definition for a functional food, it still has to be in the form of a food. So either in its natural state or in a modified state, not as a supplement. So those same ingredients can be converted into a tablet or a capsule and sold as a supplement. So here's a whole lot of examples of foods that are modified functional foods. So all of these foods have now got this additional ingredient omega-3, which will help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. And these are some examples within Australia. So here are some examples of where they've added some probiotics to a variety of different foods, including things like chocolate. Some examples that we have in Australia. So in Australia, it's mainly natural yogurts and drinking yogurts, including the Yakult. Some examples where they've fortified the products and added some extra fibre. Here's some Australian examples. A whole lot of these functional waters now. I'm pretty sure you would have seen the vitamin waters, something like these, where they've actually added either vitamins or minerals to drinking water. And again, energy drinks, high in caffeine or other ingredients which increase your metabolism. These are products high in antioxidants. And these products are high in plant statins, designed to absorb the cholesterol. And also used for other functions. Showing the growth in these energy drinks, so growth in functional foods. Now, I think I've already shown you the Weet-Bix example previously. So when you get a chance, you just have a look at the YouTube link. It only goes for a couple of minutes. So there's an example of a functional food in that they added some plant sterols, or some plant statins to the Weet-Bix, and now it's able to absorb cholesterol and lower your cholesterol levels. Okay, market trend at the moment is for these functional foods. We've got an ageing population. We've got a lot of people in the population that are suffering some sort of chronic disease, and they're looking for foods that will provide those additional benefits. So there are foods that have been specifically designed for all of those different chronic diseases. So whether it's problems with the cardiovascular system, problems with your digestive system, and so on. Right, so we've got ageing population, more chronic disease, and so the manufacturers have actually developed various functional foods for each of these chronic conditions. So, for example, in terms of foods designed specifically to treat cardiovascular disease, they've got foods in which they've added omega-3s, or they've added fibre, or added antioxidants. In terms of obesity, they've developed foods that have got herbal extracts or high in protein, high in fibre, make you feel full. In terms of brain function, they've developed foods with high levels of omega-3, antioxidants. In terms of your joints, again, they've produced a whole lot of different foods with various vitamins, minerals, omega-3, and specific foods for the elderly. So they've had foods with high levels of probiotics and fibre and antioxidants. Just to get an idea of what the worth of functional foods is, the figures are a few years old, but gives us a bit of an idea. United States functional foods are worth $152 billion a year. In Australia, it's worth about close to about $3 billion a year. So very big in the United States and Japan. Growing in Australia. It's worth about close to $3 billion. Just an idea of the sort of products. So some designed for preventing osteoporosis, some designed for reducing cardiovascular disease, some for digestive health, and a lot of those energy drinks. Again, just showing the growth in various functional foods. In Japan, I think this is a lot of those Yakult type products, so they're very concerned about digestive health. This is a good video to have a look at. Superfoods produced by the ABC, the checkout, and just goes through all of these different so-called functional foods and talks about advantages and disadvantages of these functional foods. So again, please have a look at that link when you get a chance and go through. So here's a list of the various foods that have been produced, so foods with the B probiotics and so on. So in terms of antioxidants, what they're doing is just simply extracting the antioxidants from natural fruits and vegetables and then incorporating them into these so-called functional foods. So remember, the antioxidants can repair damaged cells and can prevent things like heart disease and some types of cancer. Also adding things like omega-3, again getting it from natural food sources such as walnuts, oily fish. And these are all the potential benefits of having omega-3 in one of these functional foods. So supposedly can reduce heart disease, some types of cancer, diabetes, and other problems. Okay, many foods are now being developed with probiotics. World Health Organization says it's probiotic if the food contains enough bacteria. So in terms of enough bacteria, it needs to be, in Australia I think they talk about 8 million bacteria per mil or per gram of food. And those bacteria need to be able to survive and get to the large intestine and then give you some sort of benefit. So they need to be able to survive the stomach acid, which is pH of 2, and then be able to attach themselves to the intestines and then provide benefits once they're growing in your large intestine. Now, any of the lactic acid bacteria are classified as probiotic. So, lactobacilli, streptococci, bifidobacterium. And if you look at a yogurt you might get from the supermarket, often they'll have 2 or 3 different strains of bacteria. So to be a good probiotic, it needs to be able to do all these things. Survive the acid in the stomach, be able to attach itself to the large intestine, be able to live in the large intestine, use up the nutrients found in the large intestines and grow, obviously be non-pathogenic to humans, non-toxic to humans, and give us some sort of beneficial effect. And some of the benefits will be reducing inflammation, reducing cancer, and improving your immunity. Here's all the potential benefits of probiotics. So whether it's oral hygiene, so reducing dental caries, reducing plaques. This one here, the preventing Helicobacter, so it prevents the stomach ulcers. Supposedly reduce incidence of allergies, reduce the incidence of asthma, reduce certain types of cancer, reduce some sort of infections, prevent digestive problems such as diarrhea, and reduce the effects of lactose intolerance. Again, showing some of the benefits. Okay, we've talked through most of those. It's also supposedly help your immune system. So it's not just the yogurts and the drinking yogurts in which you've got probiotics, but they've added probiotics to all sorts of foods. So you can actually buy it as a dehydrated capsule in a chemist if you want to. And so in that dehydrated form, they can actually add it to products like cheese or chocolate or whatever it might be. So this is a common one that we might use as a probiotic, the Yakult. So this relies on one strain only. It's got the Lactobacillus casei-shirota strain, and their product actually contains 8 billion bacteria. And that's why they've actually got a little bit of sweetness in there to actually preserve the Lactobacillus in the culture. Superfoods. You might go online and have a look at what they're currently calling the superfoods. So this is a list of so-called superfoods, but it changes all the time. So depending on what they're trying to market at a particular point in time, it might actually be classified as a superfood. But all of these, I mean, they're just natural foods which happen to have a high level of certain components, whether it's an antioxidant, whether it's a phytochemical, whether it's omega-3. There's no such thing as a superfood. That's why I've got it in question mark. It's just a marketing ploy used to promote certain products. So what we should be doing is consuming natural foods which have already got functional properties, particularly things like the fruits and vegetables. We've got the phytochemicals, the fibre, naturally oily fish, which has already got naturally occurring omega-3, or natural grains like the oats, which are high in insoluble fibre, which will absorb the cholesterol. But often people look quick fix, and so the food processors, the marketing people will talk about these superfoods with these superpowers. What we need to do is have a look at that video that I referred to, and that goes through and talks about these superfoods. So concluding, yes, these functional foods can work, can help prevent some of those chronic diseases, so can help reduce heart disease, can help reduce diabetes, can help lower your cholesterol. But what you really need is to have a balanced diet, so have a lot of the natural foods with actually got natural functional properties, so natural fruits, vegetables, oily fish. Combine that with a bit of physical activity to maintain healthy weight, and don't look for a superfood, don't look for a magic bullet.